even if they manage to pass part of it, it will be such a revolution in the church that you can legitimately ask, what will be left of the church of our Lord Jesus Christ?
The synodal process, it's a Pandora's box, 100 questions and answers. One of the authors of this book, Mr. Julio Loredo, joins us now. Good morning to you, Mr. Julio Loredo.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Let's start with why you wrote this book, or why you co-authored this book. Why this book? Why now? Why the timing?
Well, in October, there will be the first session of the Assembly of the Synod of the Bishops, which is a body, an episcopal body created by Pope Paul VI in 1965, in order to discuss issues related to the church, thus making true the collegiality, which was one of the main themes of the Second Vatican Council. Now, in 2015, Pope Francis announced deep changes in the Synod of the Bishops in order to make it more democratic and in order to begin a process of reform of the church to transform it into a constitutively synodal church. So the church will be one, Holy Roman Catholic, Apostolic, and synodal. Well, the Synod technically already started 2 years ago. It was the consulting process. The people of God should have been, because it wasn't, but it should have been consulted. And then we are entering now in October in the assembly, which will convene in Rome. Then there will be the application and the feedback part of the Synod. And then there will be a second session, a second universal session next October. So it's an extremely important event that will happen in Holy Mother Church. There are people, the promoters of the Synod, who actually want to reform the church from its foundations. They actually want to reform its structure, its doctrine, its magisterium, etc., thereby basically constructing or building or imagining or framing a new church. So some people are speaking that this will be sort of a third Vatican Council. Many people are saying that this is the biggest challenge in the pontificate of Pope Francis, that it's a turning point in the history of the church, etc., etc. Now, as much as the people of God, I mean the faithful, should have been involved in the process by the very synodal logic, very few people were actually consulted, and those very few people who were consulted were mostly on the progressive side. So 90% or 95% of the faithful don't know what's going on. They haven't been informed. So we published this book in a very simple form, 100 questions, 100 answers, in the catechism form, explaining in a very simple, very direct way what is the issue at stake.
Tell me about Cardinal Burke's participation in this book. How did you get him? And it seems like he's coming out very strongly here.
We presented him the book, the draft of the book. He read it. He made 2 or 3 corrections because, well, he's a cardinal, he's a theologian. I think he had all the right to do so. And then we asked for this preface, which he very gladly gave.
You write in the introduction, thus, synodality risks becoming one of those talismanic words, meaning highly elastic words that are susceptible to being radicalized and abused for propaganda. It seems to be one of the tactics of the modernists in the church to leverage these types of words, to say things without meaning anything in order to leave as wide as possible every option of interpretation.
Absolutely, yes. And this is a tactic that is very well studied by the revolutionaries. If not before, it began with the Frankfurt School of Marxist thought. They began to study how to manipulate the language in order to forward the revolutionary ideals. Unperceived ideological transshipment. And it's a tactic whereby they take some words, they turn them into buzzwords. I mean, words that everybody repeats, everybody speaks about, all the media use them. And it's like an egg that you can take out the inside and then substitute it with other contents. So the word is the same, the contents begin to change. And this literally causes a brainwashing in the people because you begin to use a word with this changing, which even admitting a legitimate sense, they play with it in order to load it with illegitimate senses. And it's a very, very well studied tactic. For example, synodality. Synodality, the church has been synodal all of its history. But synodality in this sense means democratic, liberal democratic, egalitarian. It's more like Soviet democracy, more like Soviet synodalism, because they want to restructure the church not as a hierarchical institution, but as a network of synods. It's a local parish synod which governs the parish, an interparochial synod which governs the diocese, etc., all the way up. And it's a metaphor often used by Pope Francis of the inverted pyramid. He says the structure of the church is too clerical and too hierarchical. We have to invert it. We have to put it upside down. And he uses the metaphor of the inverted pyramid. So even if the word synod or synodality is perfectly legitimate in itself, it's being loaded with revolutionary contents, and it's been used in this sense.
Question number 32 really stood out to me. Is radical inclusion the key to understanding the coming synod? What did you say in your book, Mr. Loredo?
The synod is supposed to involve the whole people of God, and the International Theological Commission published a theological document giving the doctrinal, the theological foundation. They say that the whole people of God is infallible, the so-called infallibility in credendo, in the faith. This is true, but you have to be very, very careful when you manipulate these theological points. Now, they say that the synod has to listen, and this is another key word, another buzzword. It has to listen to the people of God, to what they have to say. The bishop cannot teach, the church cannot teach, the church cannot order. The church has to listen and follow what the people of God has to say. Now, within the people of God, there are privileged minorities, and this is the point. Privileged minorities which up to now have been marginalized, have been put on the sides, have been put on the fringes. These minorities have to be included radically. Who are or what are these minorities? They themselves say homosexuals, LGBT, radical feminists, people who are living while not being married. All these minorities have to be radically included in the church. Now, included, not received. The church always receives the sinner, not the sin. Inclusion means to receive the sinner with the sin, because you cannot discriminate. So if you include a practicing homosexual in the church, in the life of the church, you cannot tell him, you have to convert, you have to stop practicing homosexuality because that's a sin. You cannot say that, because that will be discrimination. So you include him as he is, with his sins. Now, if we are to include all these people with their sins, either we change the doctrine of the church, the moral doctrine of the church, or this becomes impossible. Remember what Machiavello told the prince to do. For example, if you want to raise taxes by 20%, you say that you want to raise them by 50%. People will protest, and then you say, well, no, I will not raise it by 50% because my people is asking me to be a bit more moderate. I'm just going to raise them by 20%. So you end up doing what you wanted by proposing something much bigger, much more radical. They are proposing some very radical reforms in the church to end with, to ordain women, to end any discrimination against homosexuals, to ordain homosexual priests, to end with the pontifical authority, which has to be shared by all the people, etc., etc. My own hunch is that they will not be able to implement every single proposition that they are doing. But even if they manage to pass part of it, it will be such a revolution in the church that you can legitimately ask, what will be left of the church of our Lord Jesus Christ? Because even if 20, 30% will be implemented, that will already be a very a huge upheaval in the church.
Are we on the brink of schism?
Schism is to separate yourself from tradition. Now, someone separating from tradition, and it's certainly not us.
What ought the lay folk to do, in your opinion?
Well, we have to inform, we have to alert, because they will not be able to pass all these reforms if they see that there is a strong reaction. They are already watering down their proposals because they've seen that there's a swelling reaction against it. So we have to pray, inform, and react. Always with respect, but also with much firmness.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.